welcome to episode 2 of this series. Thank you for tuning in and thank you for the support for the last episode, aka the first episode of this series. I really appreciate the feedback and the support and encouragement that came through after I shared the first session, and I literally recorded it and uploaded it and published it on that day. So it was very sporadic, but I felt that that is what I needed to do. I needed to get it out there. Effectively, I've had so much support and messages from people who are in a similar position where they've got projects and things that they want to get started, but for whatever reason, they haven't done it. So me doing this has encouraged them, and I appreciate that, because if it changes one person's trajectory, then I've already won. So boom. All right. So as you can tell by today's title, I'm going to be talking about the black poppy. I'm also going to be sharing my thoughts on the traditional red poppy and why I no longer wear it. And I'm also going to be shedding light on 3 black forgotten heroes and why the black poppy is very important to me. I think I'm also going to start off with a comment that was left on the last episode. By the way, if you listen to this on Spotify, you are able to leave comments. If I get any comments on any of the episodes, I'm going to be addressing it at the start. So this one is from Blick Lander. I'd love to know the reason behind that name. She or he said, "Well done for taking action. Shouldn't have kicked off years ago. Everything in the right time, or at the right time." You're right, and I appreciate that. And I agree. Everything is at the right time. I feel like internally it should have went live ages ago, but you're right. There's a reason and season for everything. So thank you for that encouragement. And if you do want to leave a comment on this, simply load it up on Spotify, and there should be a comment section where you can type your thoughts, and I will big you up at the start of each episode. So without any further ado, let's get into this. So starting off with early memories. So I used to wear the red poppy. Going to school, I recall putting 20p or 50p in a bucket, and that bucket would go to charity and support people who have been affected by World War, whether or not they're survivors or family of survivors. And it makes sense, and I think that it's important to still keep those charities going, especially if they actually deliver the donations to those people in need, because I can imagine there's a lot of people who can no longer work or are no longer in a position of working, so big them up. I really enjoyed the 2-minute silence at school, especially. I felt that it was a time where the whole nation came together in silence, in unity, reflecting, and I enjoyed that. Obviously it was funny when people would shift or make noise or try to make you laugh during the 2-minute silence, but I do think and regard the solemnness of those few moments when everyone comes together and reflects, and I think that's important. I think reflection should be an important part of your day, your daily walk anyway. And I think for the whole nation to do it is a nice thing. It's a nice thing to see. And that typically happens on the 11th day of the 11th month and the 11th hour of that day. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm a big numbers person as well, and I think it's quite a nice day to signify those who were before us, those who paved the way to kind of be where we are today in this society. Am I a supporter of war in general? No. I don't think lives should be lost for whatever reason people fought for. However, I'm also very grateful to be born at the time I was born, and also the place that I was born. Big up Craig and Yawning. And if things went differently, apparently we'll be all speaking another language, we'll be speaking German or something like that. So just how things turned out, I'm grateful for how we are in the position, or how I am in the position I am today. I used to rock the poppy. Now I don't. The reason being is because I think growing up, I had history lessons, yeah, And I was made to feel very uncomfortable and question why we are only taught certain things and not taught other things. Occasionally, I would attend Saturday school and summer clubs where during this time it'll be run by majoritively black people, black teachers, and we'd learn about black history. And I really questioned, why was this not being taught in school? Why isn't it part of the curriculum all year round? Yes, we had Black History Month, and it was only for that short period of time where you'd hear a couple of name drops, typically, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, yeah. Then outside of that, the only reference to black history would be slavery. And being in a majority white school, and you're seeing stories about how the English invaded this country and the Battle of Hastings and King Henry and Queen this, and then the only mention of what black people go through is slavery, and you're watching content and only people who look like you are subservient people, maids and slaves, and then you get some weird looks in class like, is that you? Like, is that you? Is that your roots? Is that your beginnings? It's just, you're made to feel very uncomfortable. You're made to feel an outsider. And then learning about the contributions that Caribbean people had to rebuilding and restructuring Britain after the World War, and that not being celebrated or recognized, made me feel like, you know what, I don't even want to rock this, because I feel like the full history is not being told. Like, even if you break down the word history, it's his story. It's his version of the story that is being told to us. And especially in Western society, it's going to be positioned in one way. And then imagine the things that are not told. Do you know what I'm saying? So I was like, you know what? I don't feel like rocking this anymore, man. I don't really stand for what it represents. However, I will never tell someone else not to wear it. Just me personally, I just don't feel that, unfortunately, the whole truth is told. So if I was to ever wear a poppy, it would be the black poppy, which represents diversity and remembers those people of colour who took part in the war, who were kind of whitewashed and kind of forgotten and put in the back as if they weren't taking part, which I think is a terrible thing. So traditionally, the red poppy as a symbol represents the bloodshed, the sacrifice and resilience of fallen soldiers, and it's widely worn in the UK as a mark of respect and remembrance, which I think is fantastic. It's good for people to remember people in that way, but again, it's just personally not something that I would rock and represent as a black man in the UK, especially when I'm made to feel regularly like I don't belong here and I'm treated different as a result. So while the red poppy honours all war heroes, the black poppy, introduced in 2010 by the Black Poppy Rose organisation, specifically recognises the contributions of black servicemen and women. The black poppy allows communities of African and Caribbean and other heritages within the black community to see themselves represented and honoured. It serves as a symbol of recognition, remembrance and pride, providing a space to reflect on the contribution that might not always be seen in the mainstream and part of the Remembrance Day narratives. So I think that's really important to rock. And in saying that, I'm also going to shed light on significant contributions from 3 black war veterans who I never knew before, doing a bit of research for this podcast. So the fact that I never knew them, it might mean a lot of people don't really know about them. So I thought I'd kind of do a bit of history, a bit of knowledge sharing as part of this podcast. Not every episode will be like this, but I think it's quite important to kind of share this information and my reasoning as to why I think it's important to use my platform to share this knowledge as well. So the first of 3 heroes that I'm going to be talking about today is Robbie Clark, who's Britain's first black pilot. And he was actually discovered by chance in an archive of the Royal Air Force Museum. During the First War, Sergeant William Robinson Clark from Jamaica, became the first black man to fly for Britain. And his view for supporting and contributing to the war was that he was volunteering for the mother country. Even volunteering sounds mad. The fact that you are doing this with no monetary gain in mind, but you're literally putting your life on the line to serve what you viewed as the mother country outside of your own homeland. William Robinson Clark was one of 15,600 black Caribbean volunteers who enlisted to fight during the First World War. Like young men all over the empire, some were enlisted for economic or personal reasons or to seek adventure. Others, however, had deeper understanding of what was at stake. Despite the horrors of slavery and the injustices of colonialism, black people still considered Britain as the mother country and strongly identified with her culture, institutions, and professed ideals. For them, the war was being fought to defend civilization against tyranny, and they would do what they could do to help. They would also show that as loyal subjects of His Majesty, they deserved better treatment and perhaps even independence from British rule. Clark's real ambition was to fly, and in December 1916, he was selected to undergo pilot training in England. Clark qualified on the 26th of April 1917, receiving a Royal Aero Club RAEC Aviator's Certificate. A photograph of this certificate is held in the RAF Museum archive with an index card that describes his nationality as British. In June 1917, Clark was sadly shot in his spine while serving on duty. In a letter discovered and archived at the museum, he writes to his mother, and it says, "I was doing some photographs a few miles from the other side when about 5 Hun scouts came down upon me, and before I could get away, I got a bullet through my spine. I managed to pilot the machine nearly back to the aerodrome, but I had to put her down as I was too weak to fly anymore. My observer escaped without any injury." Clark remained in hospital in Britain until November 2017. Clark later returned to Jamaica to work in the building trade. He was an active veteran, and he was eventually appointed life president of the Jamaican branch of the Royal Air Forces Association. His story was only discovered by chance during a volunteer project researching the Royal Aero Club collection held at loan at the museum. So this is just one of many stories and probably experiences of black Caribbeans, and the fact that this was discovered by chance suggests that there were quite a few people similar to Robbie's background who might have, experienced similar things. And these again are stories that we are not told and it's not broadcast. The next black hero that I'm going to speak about is, let me load it up. We have the remarkable legacy of squadron leader Ulrich Cross. Let me look up the meaning of Ulrich because I've never heard of that name before. So, meaning, the consensus is it means the ruler of people, a powerful name. So Ulrich Cross is recognised for his exceptional bravery and skill in the RAF during the Second World War, which earned him recognition as a Trinidadian war hero and the most decorated Caribbean airman of this era. Philip Louis Ulrich Cross, known as Ulrich, was born on the 1st of May 1917 in the port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. Ulrich arrived in Britain in November 1941 and began his training as a navigator in the RAF. After completing his training, he was commissioned as an officer and assigned to 139 Squadron based in RAF Marham. Speaking on his service, Ulrich said, "I did almost 80 operations. I was lucky. I crash landed, I think 5 or 6, 7 times. The strange thing is, when you're really young, you feel immortal. You know that obviously the possibility existed that every time you got up in an aeroplane and flew over Germany, you wouldn't come back." He continued, "I never felt I was going to the aid of the mother country. Some people did, but I would say that the majority of us didn't. Reasons differ, but certainly for myself, while you're young, this was a tremendous adventure and you're doing it for the right reasons." After leaving the RAF as a squadron leader, in 1947, Ulrich pursued a legal career practicing law in Ghana and Tanzania. He later returned to Trinidad, where he became a High Court judge in 1990. He was appointed Trinidad and Tobago's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Ulrich passed away on October the 4th, 2013, at the age of 96, leaving behind a legacy of courage and service, both in the skies and his contributions to law and diplomacy. Shout out my man, yeah, because that's serious. And again, before this, I never knew or heard of him. So these are stories that should be told to let people know about Black African Caribbeans who contributed to the World War and were part of the lineup, because we're often just washed out and put at the back, and it's not right. So another Jamaican that served in the RAF was Eddie Martin Noble, who was born in 1917 and passed away in 2007. Noble volunteered after seeing a film called In Which We Served, and he believed after seeing this that supporting and being part of the war, fighting for England, Britain, would assist him in attaining his law degree. So he travelled and was stationed in East Anglia throughout the war. In his autobiography, Noble remembered the friendliness of some of the English people in the wartime. Everyone gave me a greeting, he said, and some, bolder than others, even stopped for a chat. They wanted to know what part of the world I was from. However, the colour bar appeared to hold Noble back. Despite a solid work ethic and discipline, he was never promoted and left the RAF in 1951. Noble went into business, but what could have been a successful enterprise was forced to close as a result of cash flow problems brought on by the worker strikes and the bank's unwillingness to provide him with a loan. In 1972, Noble was attacked and savagely beaten by members of the National Front, aka NFs. The attack destroyed Noble's tear ducts, resulting in uncontrollable tears flowing from his eyes whenever he got emotional. Noble would go on to author 7 books, including 1984, his autobiography, Jamaica Airman, A Black Man in Britain, 1943 and after. This book told the story about what it was like being in Black post-war Britain and part of Windrush generation. Noble believed that Caribbean people in Britain needed to know how their ancestors contributed to the development and shaped the fabric of British society. And into his 80s, attended conferences that focused on Black children and the education system. After surviving 3 heart attacks, Noble passed away in July 2007. I think it's really important to mention Eddie's experience because, again, I can only imagine the hostility that you would experience living in Britain, such a divided nation, overcoming the war, and you are there to help and be part of rebuilding that community, but you are treated negatively and unwelcomed by the very people who you tried to help. I can only imagine how mentally destroying that could have been. So that's the reason why I believe that the Black Poppy is very important, especially to raise awareness to those who might not have any clue of the involvement of other people within the war and how Black Caribbeans specifically helped to shape and rebuild Britain to what it is today. So when I'm seeing Get Out Our Country and Stop the Boats and all this kind of, rhetoric towards people who don't look like you just because they're in your country, you don't really know the deeper depths, the lengths that people went through to fight for this country. And I think if that is widely discussed and taught, then I think, more people would have appreciation for the mindset of unity and people putting their life on the lines to defend Great Britain. I think, after today, people selling poppies won't really be around. But maybe think about next year about actually rocking a black poppy, and that could help spark discussion about black people's contributions to the World War, and just encourage that level of diversity and inclusion in this arena as well. I'd like to also take this moment to remember all of our fallen soldiers, all of our friends and family who's gone before us. I know that death can be a very difficult topic. To me, death is very difficult. It's part of life, obviously, but when you lose a loved one, it really helps to it really reshapes your point of view on life, and you kind of learn to value and experience every single day that you wake up even more so, because you have life, and because you have life, you are loved and you are here for a reason. So thank you to everyone who's listened. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave a comment in the comment section, share it with your friends, and let them know about this podcast too. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to discuss, but also I was thinking of uploading potentially twice a week. Yeah, because I found during recording these, and this isn't the first one I've recorded since last week, I've recorded a few more, that I end up talking about a lot of different things, which could go on to various episodes. So I've got quite a decent amount of content, even it's just been a week since the first one. So I might upload twice a week. I'm thinking about what is the most important or most impactful morning of the week that people face. Is it Monday? Because you got the Monday blues, and you have to it's the start of the working week and so I'm gonna stick with Mondays. But I was thinking I enjoy waking up on Friday, because I feel like Friday's here, last day of the week, weekends ahead. I was thinking, do I enjoy waking up on a Saturday morning than a Friday morning? I'm not sure. So that's what I'll be asking you. What mornings do you really enjoy waking up on during the week? Is it Fridays or Saturdays or Sundays or Mondays? What are the most impactful days for you during the week? I'm definitely going to stick with the Mondays, but if I was to introduce a second uploading day, I potentially will go with Friday, but that could be swayed. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys think too. So until next time, peace and love. Woyoy.